What is up, everybody? Happy More Herbs, Less Salt Day, and welcome to the preseason podcast, post-draft podcast, for the 18th season of the Sandlot Fantasy Football League. Here we are. With me this week, I've got Mr. Hillers. What's going, Mr. Hillers?
Yeah, more herbs indeed. But if we were looking for less salt, this is maybe not the podcast for you.
Well, I've also got with me Nicholas J. Makita. What's going on, bud? Are you an herbs or a salt guy?
Well, I did have a nice herbal tea earlier today that my wife made me, which is really good.
Okay.
Counterbalanced by a very salty
Jesus.
piece of tuna. So, kind of got a little bit of both.
Ick.
Okay. All right, Martha Stewart.
God, that took a turn. Okay.
Christ.
Hey, this is live, man. You don't know what
It's
you're
a
gonna
football podcast.
Did you drink it with your pinky out like this? Did you do this thing?
Yeah. I did. I was playing a fancy board game, and it was very nice. And I think I had some biscuits too. It was great.
What is a fancy board game?
Any board game.
I mean, in the modern era, he's not wrong. It's they're all pretty bespoke.
I gotta tell you, I played a Frozen themed Chutes and Ladders with my daughter this morning. Didn't seem all that fancy. Gotta be honest.
Did you win?
No, she crushed me. Crushed me like a grape.
Well, sounds like a hater.
Yeah.
This is more of a question. This is more of a statement for you.
You suck.
I still cannot. Whenever someone says let's play a game of Settlers of Catan, I'm like, I sigh with I can't. I played so much Catan back in the day, and unless I'm playing with my friends drinking bottles of wine at a time, I cannot play Catan.
Right.
I get that it's fun, but the idea of playing Settlers of Catan right now is
yeah,
it feels like such a slog. It's right up there with Monopoly for me. Right up there with Monopoly.
I'd like to, but the friendship needs to be unruinable, or it will be ruined.
Yeah, there may come a time. There may come a day when Settlers of Catan becomes desirable again, but it is not this day, and it is not.
Well, and you know what? When that day comes, no one's gonna want your fucking sheep.
Still, agreed. All right, folks.
You're right.
So what we're looking at this podcast is we're going to go over the draft. We're going to give some overall thoughts on how we think the draft went, the draft weekend, specifics about the actual draft itself. We're going to do a quick little team reviews, see what we thought about their teams, and then we'll give you some predictions on what we think, how we think the season is going to go, which are always pretty spot on. So let's jump into it, boys. Overall draft thoughts. Let's start, Nick.
Let's start with TDJ. Let's start with the champion. Let's start with the champion of TDJ.
No. I'm before we get into specific teams. Just overall, any thoughts on how the draft flowed and any differences in how you thought the draft went overall this year versus other years, or is it just we've kind of found how our draft goes and it's kind of a template at this point?
Personally, I feel like the draft itself. So I guess I look at draft day as two separate events. There's the first hour, which is the rule discussion and things that we're going to do for the league going forward. And then there's the actual draft itself. I think that our rule discussion, I feel like we glossed over a lot of it. And I think that there were things that we didn't necessarily have as much discussion as there wasn't as much discussion as there normally is, which is good. But I also kind of feel like there should have been more discussions at the same time, because I feel like everyone was just let's just get on with the draft. I'm done with this. We know how this league runs. And if that's the case, great. But there was also not much we know what we're voting on. We know where we're going with this. This is what we're doing. Great. And maybe that's just it. There's just a lot of everyone's happy with the league the way it is. And that's great if that's the case. In terms of the draft itself, it was flawlessly fast. We were in and out of there in 2.5 hours, which is amazing.
Record.
I was amazed at how efficient everyone was. So kudos to everyone. And it was everyone knowing the value of the players, and it was knowing that you weren't gonna Najee Harris. You didn't start the bidding at $1. It's Najee Harris $30, because this is $30 is the value.
The baseline minimum, right?
Yeah,
could not have gone for less. Yeah,
and we weren't incrementing by $1 at a time. Especially early on, it was $30, well, $32, $35, $37, $40. Like it's like we kept making those jumps because we knew what we wanted to spend and we wanted to get in and get. I don't know if it was we wanted to get out, but it made the draft so much more interesting because there was a mind games going on where it was if I said 30, 32, like my next number wasn't going to be 32. I didn't know what my next number was going to be based on what Merrill was going to say. I had to be prepared to say if I said 30, he said 35. And I'm like, okay, wait, am I prepared to spend 36 as my next number to throw out?
Right.
And I think that it was so much fun to listen to and to watch.
Well, and a lot of the length of a draft comes in when it's like going once, going twice, 37, and it's like, all right, come on, guys. Like if we're gonna bid, let's just fucking bid and get it over with. Like we don't need to wait till the about to say sold thing. Like, and there was not as much of that this year. I feel like as there have been in years past.
It wasn't even the bidders. I feel like as much as it was like people knew when to switch in as auctioneers without needing a ton of extra stuff. There wasn't a lot of talk around rules discussion because we have iterated on this now 18 times. If it wasn't pretty close to what people thought was acceptable, we would have worked it out by now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, to be fair, it's more like 12-ish times because, we switched to an auction.
And that's
still,
fine. But
the point stands, right?
Right, yeah, 12 is fine, especially for people our age. It's like we're not spending that much time fussing about the details or pretending like it's a massive life crisis. If one thing goes, there's your draft day rhetoric, but we're all old men now. You know what I mean? We kind of understand like how it goes, and people just kind of want to get down to business and see the thing. And there was still interesting decisions made and some mistakes made and drama. There was still all that happening, but it was much more efficient just because I think everybody understood the rules, they understood their role. We had a fair bit of people on the internet, so there was even less opportunity than there usually is for sort of the drunken shenanigans that'll take up 10 or 20 minutes while people F around, grab acid in person. So I feel like there was a number of factors to make this probably, certainly our most efficient draft to date, maybe our most efficient one ever. Hopefully in the future we can get to, something where we can get together a little bit more frequently because there's a whole kind of day around it that is always a ton of fun and didn't change. That was still fun.
Fun for most.
You still got up the next morning hungover and realized, nope, there's not any juice for you in the fridge. But if you want steak or beer
or sausage gravy,
you're well provided for. So it was fun to like bro out for a weekend, and it'll always be. This was a good one. It was nice to get out to a nice house and definitely meet some new people. Dez and Esther were huge. I think additions to the general vibe, and certainly goaded Merrill into throwing up on the porch.
Oh God!
Weren't there?
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
that's a story for a different podcast.
That's a different. Yeah.
All right.
Eat dinner,
Moving
folks.
on.
Eat dinner. That's the key.
You did eat dinner.
Yeah, I'll just say like.
He ate a full steak and potato.
No, I ate half a steak and half a potato. Regardless, whatever.
Prepared your dinner did a really good job.
What I'll say draft-wise, like, just running through it, man, I do feel like we're kind of falling into a template, right, where we know what top receivers go for. They're going to be like $36-ish, right? We know.
That shocked me, I will say. When Robert Woods went for $36, I was like, what the
That's
fuck?
exactly what he went for last year. The exact same price.
In my mind, top receivers are still $20, and I feel like that couldn't have been more than 2 years ago. Right?
That's actually, let's be clear here, that's never, ever been the case in this league. Ever.
I mean, when you've got DeAndre Hopkins at 42 and CeeDee Lamb at 6, like what do you do with this? I don't understand this new world.
Wait, what do you mean by that?
Oh yeah, let's Meryl, go back to your thoughts. Go back to your thoughts before Hillary.
Yeah, so to get back to reality here, the standard way that our drafts, right? Well, there goes gravity. Mom spaghetti. So we're talking, like we got a pretty good template on where our top wide receivers go. They're like mid to high 30s. It feels like the top wide receiver goes for. You get below that, like a couple go for over 30, and then you're working through like the low to mid 20s for the rest of them, right? Like that's pretty templated at this point. We've got our running backs now. Top running back typically goes for 60 plus now. We've figured that out. Now we're going to get into Najee Harris in a little bit and how that works. But typically top running back goes for around 60-ish. One more maybe 50 plus, and then the rest are going for like low 40s down to the third. Like to me, it's really templated, and it's
the $60 wall has been broken for sure.
Well, it has, but I think for people who have been in this draft year after year, we kind of know now. Like top running back is this guy. Okay, well here's how much he's going to go for. Who wants to spend the money? And that's kind of where we are. I thought this year running backs were a little cheaper than they have been in the past. Maybe that's just a weird subjective.
The quality of the keepers was also quite top weighted.
Maybe that's part of it. Yeah,
there's often in years there's people that retire or get hurt or something that would have been keepers at a top amount. This year, a lot of the top candidates were still viable, and even some of the not quite top candidates, Joe Mixon, were like you didn't know what they were going to go for, so you just felt like. Knowing that the rising prices, you've got to on the draft maybe board, make some unpopular decisions.
It's CMC, it's McCaffrey, Kamara, Saquon, Elliott, Henry, Cook, Elliott, Jones.
How many Elliots are there? I'm just wondering.
How many?
You've listed 3 Elliots now.
Elliott, also Elliott.
Also Elliott, yeah.
I mean, the top 9. I mean, the top the top running backs are kept. Like ultimately, what I'm saying is that when you're looking at these values, that there obviously inflation comes into this, but that it's
an Arsenio Billingham.
The first round, generally speaking, the first round players are gone. So when you're looking at like these
right, our draft starts at the third round of a snakes draft. Yeah. I think
that's fair, and there's some preseason trading that facilitates that and makes that happen for sure. I think the other thing that surprised me is this year, and maybe it doesn't surprise me, but now this is part of the template too. Is the first 1 or 2 big name players are bargains now. If early on, I think from now on, I'm not throwing out these top guys first. I'm throwing out mid-level guys first. Because I'm tired, Najee Harris, if he was thrown out maybe 20 minutes, maybe even 10 minutes after he was initially thrown out, he went for $55. If he was thrown out 10 minutes later after 4 other people had been picked, he's probably going for $65. But because he was the first person thrown out, people are a little gun shy, and I think that's why he went for 55 instead of 60.
So I think that's something you're
congratulations
for had tracked earlier. But that
you guys are both years behind. Years behind on this meta.
You're weeks behind. You're
streets behind.
Streets behind.
You're streets behind on the. If you want a good running back value, buy the first one.
Kyle Pitts was the first player nominated this year, and I did bold his name on our draft board this year just to see he was the first, and just as something to watch going forward. If we start tracking who is the first player nominated, just so we can see
fathom the market
the value that this person went for.
Right.
If Kyle Pitts went 2, 3, 4, 5 picks later, does he go for $13? But I think that people just weren't expecting that to be the first name thrown out.
Kyle Pitts was an excellent first name to throw out, but I mean, in terms of not expecting the early running backs to go for better values than the 8th through 16th running backs, that I feel has been a known quantity for years now. It's because people don't, they're tentative with their limited draft dollars early out, and the best thing that you can do is to name a player and to pay what it costs before it costs too much, right? Because what a lot of people are thinking in those early picks are, there's still a lot of guys out there whose names I like, who I want to buy, maybe more than this first guy.
Yeah, and that's why the first guy goes for a value. Right. Yeah,
and then what ends up happening is you end up paying $15 more than you would want to buy on a guy that you don't
because everyone else is thinking the same thing.
Hold on.
Yeah, and everyone else is thinking the
time,
exact same thing.
Do we want to start getting into teams now, just in the interest of time?
Sure.
Because we could talk about strategy and draft all night long.
Well, I think it's interesting. I think people are interested to hear what the thoughts overall are on the draft.
Seasoned veterans.
I think this is great.
Yeah.
But
this
is also a lot of nonsense.
Well,
I mean,
it's all nonsense.
Okay, well, let's get into absolute facts.
Well, yeah, let's get into non-nonsense then, and talk about what we think about every team, which is complete certainty. Yeah.
I think let's at least get into the nonsense that people want to hear about, which is that 30 seconds where we spend talking about your team before we move on to nonsense about another team, and then that person immediately turns off and says, "I've heard what I had to say, and I'm on."
Sure, but I think people hearing overall thoughts on the draft is valuable too, because honestly, when we're talking about the Assassins, for instance, I think 11 other people are tuning out and don't give a shit.
Yeah.
So
I'll tell you this: if you are one of the 4 teams aside from us that watch this, your draft was underrated.
Yeah, fantastic draft you had. It was great. Yeah,
I mean,
we love your draft.
Didn't get the airtime, but you got some sneaky picks in there.
Amazing picks. Could not believe how much value you got out of your draft.
We didn't want to talk about it. It was scared us.
To piggyback on what you guys are saying is that in all seriousness, and to continue on with the nonsense, I think that every year as a league, our draft has gotten better and better, and it's harder and harder to pick the team that had the worst draft, and that the floor for what the definition of the worst draft is getting harder and harder to find.
Yeah, people aren't making mistakes like they used to.
Draft this year, no matter what, and I'm not saying this to be like whatever. Everyone's draft, you guys did a great job, and I think that it's hard when we say that you had a bad draft. It doesn't mean you had a bad draft. It just means that based on what everyone else's did, like, it's tough. It's really tough. We've all gotten so good at this draft, and that's why this league is so fun, because we are so committed to this, and we all do such a great job at drafting now. Like, I think that for the most part, what we're going to talk about tonight is we're going to try to isolate it to just as of August 13th, what did our teams look like? When we left the draft, what did our teams look like? And did you accomplish your goals? Everyone did. Like,
it's definitely gone from
walked out with a team that they needed to walk out. Well, just about everyone walked out with a team
that they needed. Well, that's maybe your opinion.
We'll
find out.
No, but I mean, but where he's hitting on it is, it used to be when we talked about the draft, we would be talking about the strategic decisions, missed decisions that people made, right? Like, 4 quarterbacks, or like, some nonsense is like, or where they're like, I don't need to draft.
Why did this guy draft 3 kickers?
Yeah, I don't need to draft a running back, and then I'm going to pay $50 for like the 30th running back. You know what I mean? That doesn't happen anymore. The missed decisions in some people's mind, which honestly, I've rarely proven true over the course of a season. The difference between the championship podcast and the draft podcast is often extreme and hilarious. But I mean, I think the only things that people even for themselves would say they missed out on this draft were tactical things, where it's like, maybe I should have bid a little sooner on one player, or maybe $2 or $3 more on a player, rather than I have misdesigned and misunderstood this entire enterprise.
For sure. Yeah.
Listening along, people was like, I read a few articles 2 days before and drafted only the people that said were the best sleepers that end up as a total roster as an absolute shit team. Like, that doesn't happen anymore, and that's a victory for the league, for sure.
And as and I think a couple of us are in other leagues. I know Nick's in a couple of. I don't know if Hillers is in any others, but let me say this: if anyone in our league happens to find themselves in another league, whether it's a snake draft, they're mostly snake drafts. That's the most common draft. That's just how it works. And they find themselves in another league to some way where there's other filthy casuals in that league. You sit there and you think, my God,
what is wrong with this people?
What is wrong with like our league has, and like I'm gonna say this as a fantasy elitist, okay? But like, our league has put our owners, the owners that we have in our league, are very smart at what we do, and we know what we're doing for the most part. And
weren't you just in the draft where J.K. Dobbins got drafted?
Yeah, I was in a draft tonight, right before this podcast started. J.K. Dobbins, who went down this morning with a season-ending knee injury, got drafted in the 3rd round. Okay,
Yikes.
would not happen in our league, right? Like,
Never.
obviously because it's an auction draft, would not happen in our league. But guy'd go for like maybe a buck or two at the end of the draft as maybe like a speculation keeper or whatever.
For next year,
max, right? Like that's
Yeah.
it. But like, there's a lot of other things that happen. Like, I've been in drafts where 2 quarterbacks are going in the 1st round of a snake draft of our standard scoring that we do. It's like, what is happening? Like, look, we have a very, very smart league, and I'm very proud of the league we've developed and the ownership we have. And yeah, it sucks to have a lot of people who know what they're doing. But I'm also very excited.
Even you.
I'm also very excited to be in a league where people really know what they're doing, and look forward to competing with each other at a pretty high level fantasy wise. So I'll just finish with that on the overall thoughts, and let's get into the team overviews. With that thought, we're gonna start.
So why don't we start with Richard?
Well, so I've got I don't know where my list came from, but I think it was based on. Let me see. I think it was based on, I don't know, something. We're going to start with Assassins, so I'm not sure what my list is based on.
All right. You two go first, because I got to pee, and I'll be back for my review for this.
Oh, fantastic.
Right.
Good quality work here.
Professionalism is what the podcast is known for.
So,
It really is.
So, Nick, if it's cool, we'll start with Assassins. I'll start off kind of, my thought was I was going to list kind of their needs coming in. Their big picks, and then we can list our takes. But so my thoughts were the Assassins coming in, their big needs. He needed a QB because Deshaun Watson loves massage parlors, and Watson very clear about any player he drafted this year did not. He was saying no massage parlors, could not go.
He wants his players as tense as possible.
Right? Yeah, no massage parlors for anybody. He also needed a second running back and a reliable flex position. His big picks this year, he got Darrell Henderson at $43, Terry McLaurin at $34, Trevor Lawrence at $34? That's not right. Trevor Lawrence at $8, and T. Higgins at $20. What do you think of Watson's draft overall, Nick?
No, I totally agree with you. I think that as a disclaimer, I wrote down that everyone needed a flex player because everyone needed that guy player for their league, for their team. But I totally agree with you. He needed a quarterback 1, he needed a running back 2, and he needed a tight end. And actually, I only had Henderson and McLaurin as his like good picks that he had this year. I don't think that it's not that T. Higgins isn't great. I just thought that those 2 were his picks, and I don't really know if he walked out with the quarterback that he needed. I know that I said that everyone had a great draft, and everyone did have a good draft, but I think that of the players available, that Watson definitely walked out with the weakest of the available players for his roster.
Okay, we'll give Phil a second to get readjusted here, but
I know what I think. I know what I think about Watson's team, and it's not as derogatory as you might think. I think that he picked guys that he believed in against the grain and tried to go in knowing what his keepers would be and what their value would be. He tried to go in, against the value and get the most that he could out of them. And if he was correct, this team is going to be very formidable. I mean, Trevor Lawrence just had an extremely impressive preseason game, and as little as that means, if that presages anything, he could have easily like a number 1 quarterback there. None of his positional rosters strike me as having superstars or being incredibly impressive, but they do have a certain consistency of depth that could serve him very well in the later seasons, in the later bit of the season, especially if some of these guys pan out a little bit more than you might think, which is easy to foresee out of guys like, and I know I'm a big like Devontae Parker backer, but he could get a lot of value out of that guy. That could easily be his wide receiver 3, even if somehow Tyler Lockett, Terry McLaurin, and Calvin Ridley didn't. Like, he's got some an extremely like formidable wide receiver core. His running backs are not like shocking, but I think everybody can agree that Jonathan Taylor at least has a good shot at being a number 1 running back, as does Darrell Henderson, unless the Rams do something weird. So I mean, he's a real dark horse candidate for me. I was very like that. Yes, like that. But
which they did. Yeah.
But for now, I would say that that Brad's a real. Like I didn't put him in my top 5, but like if there was a dark horse to be a guy in the championship that I didn't have in my top 5, it would probably be this team.
Yeah, I'll say I try to give every team a grade, which is completely arbitrary and means nothing. But I'd give this draft a C+. I think it was good. Like I said, he needed a QB, an RB2, and a flex. Like a lot of teams needed RB2s and flexes. I mean, that's kind of the deal. I think he overspent a little on Henderson. A lot of that was draft timing. That's just kind of how it worked out. That was the best guy that was left.
But again, Henderson was the best available running back. Like, given the time that we did this, Henderson was like the guy.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Like, and I've never been a Henderson guy. I don't, but look, whatever. That doesn't mean anything. Like Hiller's being a Devontae Parker guy. Like it doesn't, like he's a backer of Devontae Parker. Good. I'm not a backer of Darrell Henderson. It doesn't mean anything,
Devontae
right?
Parker is good.
Nobody knows anything. It doesn't mean a thing, right? This is just who we like. It doesn't matter. Watson, he spent a little bit on T. Higgins. He might have overspent on him a little bit, but like, what did he spend on Higgins? 20. What did Jamar Chase go for? I can't even see. I don't even remember. But like, I feel like I think
where are the old Ducks?
Did the Ducks get Jamar Chase? 17 for Jamar Chase?
No, 25 by the
25.
Oh, I'd rather have Higgins for 20 than Jamar Chase for 25 for sure. So like I think that's a better deal because
half a Robert.
All camp reports are that Jamar Chase can't get any separation, can't get open, and that's a problem. Like that seems to be a problem if you're a wide receiver in the NFL.
Jamar Chase dropped a bubble screen yesterday.
Yeah. I will say that the depth is kind of a problem. Like you get to the bottom of this roster, you're looking at Kenyon Drake, Devontae Parker, Marlon Mack, and Hunter Henry, and it's like who are we relying on at the end? But whatever, depth is depth. Like you can go get fab guys if you need to. I don't hate the draft. I don't love the draft. I think he went out and he got guys that he needed. Trevor Lawrence could be the next Andrew Luck at $8. That'd be a great pick. Whatever.
This is a sleeper-heavy team. If the sleepers pan out, it could be a real.
I love that he went and spent on Terry McLaurin. Get a great flex. Tyler Lockett, Calvin Ridley, and Terry McLaurin is a fearsome wide receiver 3 right there. That's really good.
Yeah,
Terry McLaurin and Calvin Ridley are good. I think Tyler Lockett is a.
Tyler Lockett caught 100 passes last year. Let's be clear.
Damn near 300 points last season.
30 of them came in one game.
It doesn't matter. The guy caught.
It does matter because if I score, if I have one player score 100 points for me in one game, that's great. I won one game.
Okay.
But overall,
he scored 265 points last season. If he skips that game, he's got 230 points, which is more than Terry McLaurin had.
Like he got 57 in one game or something like that. That's fine.
Whatever.
The guy still had 100 catches last year, and if you can give me a 100 catch receiver for $15, yeah, sign me up. Okay, I'm in. I'd love that.
And you're pretending like he might not have a 50-point game.
That's his third receiver, by the way. Tyler Lockett is his wide receiver 3.
That's a fucking flex.
I get it. I don't.
Let's
pick in the net.
Sign me up for that. So love that team. Let's move on. Patty Van Winkle's my next team here. I know Nick has a special place in his heart for Patty's draft. Nick's so proud of Patty. It's adorable, really. So we'll get to Nick in a minute here. We'll go into it here. His needs going in, as I saw them, were he needed some running backs, he needed another wide receiver, and he kind of needed to just build a core of players where he could build on. Right, like he needed some flagship players. He needed somebody. Some risks he could take where like some upside guys that he could really kind of start building a legacy or a team that could compete for years to come. His big picks this year, he spent on Josh Jacobs to get an RB. Like you got to have an RB1, and Josh Jacobs was. Say what you want about Josh Jacobs. I know Andy hates him vehemently.
He was there.
He was there, and he spent $60 on him.
It was like Mount Everest.
Bad day to discuss this. If we had this podcast yesterday, spending $45 on J.K. Dobbins would have been, we'd have been pretty happy with that one. Unfortunately, he tore his knee all to pieces today. Chase
Nope.
Claypool at 17.
Oh wait, no, but give him credit for getting Gus Edwards also.
But yeah, he backed him up with Gus Edwards. Good for you, Patty.
He
He
did
got
a good
Chase
job.
Claypool at
He
17
did
and
a good job.
Adam Thielen at 20. So, Patty went out and spent money. I was legit worried. And Hillers, Patty. We've been in Madden drafts with him. We spent a lot of time with Patty. I was legit worried about him coming into this draft with a lot of money, wondering if he was going to actually spend it. And he did. He spent his money. And so, Hillers, what are your thoughts on Patty's draft here?
Yeah, he's a thinker for sure. He likes to spend his time, and that is not an attitude or a style of thinking that lends itself well to an auction draft in any way. But if we consider that he spent $52, okay, on the ostensible Baltimore number one back, not a tragedy anymore, right? He split it up over two guys, so the real tragedy is with the J.K. Dobbins thing is honestly the loss of a roster spot, which I would say, Patty, if you're listening, picking up the most promising running back before week 1, that happened last year, and his name was James Robinson, and it worked out amazingly. So it's like there are chances out there, and there are guys I'm wondering, oh man, should I drop Tony Pollard and pick up that guy instead? I can't quite bring myself to pull the trigger, but they're out there. There are guys that could succeed amazingly in his position, even though we drafted early. And look at his wide receivers. They're excellent. He's got 4 wide receivers that scored over 200 points last year, and some guys just on the cusp, and some guys that you think could do better this year. There's more depth in this team, and with Josh Allen at the helm, I think this is a team that has been admittedly very bad. They could be quite a bit better this season based on this draft. Running back depth is going to be his biggest issue for sure, because under Baltimore and Josh Jacobs, who some people have questions about, there's nothing but question marks and hope and spit. But, I mean, it's not hopeless.
Okay. Nick, what are your thoughts?
So I think that Patty came in with the most, obviously, I know Patty came in with the most money to spend and the most roster spots to fill. And
that might have been Dez too. I'm not sure who had the most, but it was.
I think
No, it's Patty.
I mean, you're right.
He had
It could have
$180.
I think that but Patty came in with the money and he knew who he wanted. He targeted and he got them. And I think that is what I love about his drafts. And I think that he had a great draft because he walked in feeling like he needed everything, and he walked out with the players that clearly he wanted, and he was ready to spend for them. Like, obviously hindsight's 2020, and like that sucks about J.K. Dobbins. And he happened to pick up the handcuff to J.K. Dobbins, which is great for him. Like, I think that everything that Patty did made him a contender this year. Whether or not it plays out and what he does for the rest of the season, you cannot win your league in the draft,
right?
But you can lose it. And he did not do anything to make himself lose the draft this year. He came in putting himself in the best position with the best players available, with the money he could to win this league, and that's exactly what he did. And that's why I think that he had one of the best drafts. Because his team came out with the money, buying the players he wanted, and swung his dick around getting those players. That's just what I think.
And you know what? If Gus Edwards ends up as like a true like bell cow back for the Ravens, then this might be one of the best things that could have happened to him, because he's going to have a number one bell cow back at $7. I mean, that's huge.
Team and the best draft, and I think that what I'm talking about is purely from a draft.
Yeah, let's snapshot like draft day, like what happened on draft day when.
What Patty did on draft day was I said this. I said this the minute that our draft ended. Is that I thought that Patty had a great draft.
You did.
Like did I think he had a great team? Like, we'll find out later. But I think that from what he needed to do and what he did, like, matched perfectly. And I think that he did a great job.
So my grade's gonna be C- on this team. I think he had a good draft day. He needed to spend on running backs, and he did. He really spent on running backs. He needed to get a wide receiver too, and he did in Adam Thielen. But the third thing that I said he need to do is build a core, like build something like some flagship players, some keepers that he could have for a while, and I just don't see it. Like I don't see it on this team, and that's harder to do. That's easier said than done, obviously, in our draft because the values are not there a lot because everybody knows who's out there, everybody knows who the values are, and they're just not there a lot in this draft. And so, like, you look down his bench, and it's like, who are the keepers that he picked up this year? Like Chase Claypool maybe could work out, right? But he's going to be a $20 receiver next year if he wants to keep him. DJ Chark, Jarvis Landry, Damian Williams, Gus Edwards, Philip Lindsay, Cole Beasley, Cam. Like, this bench is not, like, full of guys that you're going to build a team around.
That's what free agency is for. And let's say right now it's going in. Let's say based on his roster right now. What are his keepers for next year based on August, whatever it is? His keepers for next year are Josh Allen, DK. I'm going to say Logan Thomas. I think that Logan Thomas is going to be a keeper.
Why? Why would you keep Logan Thomas when he just bought him for $3 this year after being a top 5 tight end last year?
I bought my backup tight end for $3.
So regardless, whatever. Oh, okay. Sure, Logan Thomas is a keeper next year at $6.
Maybe Adam Thielen. I'm just saying, like, I hear what you're saying.
But Mike, wait. I like your idea. We don't need to quibble this one. I like your idea of giving things a grade and putting where your mouth is. You said what? C?
C minus. I like
C minus.
He just.
I give it a B. Nick, what do you? A?
I mean, I think I give him an A for filling in exactly what he needed to do.
Look, to me, at some point, you've got to look at your team and say, like, look, am I going to be able to win with this year with this team, or do I need to try to, like, buy some lottery tickets and be like, look, I'm going to spend, instead of spending $60 on Josh Jacobs and $45 on J.K. Dobbins, I'm going to spend $15 and $20 on, like, 5 running backs, hope one of them hits. Yeah. And I think that's more what. Let me finish this thought here. I think that's what he needed to do more than anything is kind of throw out and cast a wide net on the running backs and try to grab one that's going to pop. And I don't think he did that in this. Like, don't get me wrong. I think this is the best draft he's had. And let's be clear on that. I think this is the best draft he's had in this league. And Patty,
a C minus.
Yeah, he's had some bad ones, man. Look,
yes, it's true.
Look, I'm not sugarcoating it. Like he's had some bad ones. He's adjusting. He's getting used to the auction draft. It's fine. You know, he wasn't there for one or two of them too. Like he wasn't like he hasn't been. This might be his second or third one he's done. But like to me, what he needs to do is cast a wide net, get some guys at values, and hope some of them pop. And I don't know that he did that this year.
But there's only so wide your net can be during the draft because you only have 5 roster spots. So that net is 2 starting running backs, 1 handcuff. So that's 3 of your 5 players, and then that's 2 additional players, right? So it's J.K. Dobbins, his handcuff, Josh Jacobs, and then 2 players that he can maybe fill up on, and then that he can maybe cast that net on that he's taking a shot on. Yeah. That's Damian Williams and Philip Lindsay.
I think people get the idea, guys.
Those are not guys to take shots on. Those are not guys you build a team around.
We could argue all day on individual
roster. That's just
Let's move on. Also, the one thing I would say is let's consider for the success of these teams their relative division. Like, who are they up against through the rest of the year? Could they succeed?
We'll get into
their competition.
We're gonna have more podcasts this year, guys. We promise. Those are our initial thoughts on Patty. Patty, like I said, your best draft ever. I think
we are already at 45 minutes. And
let's go to
UT.
Yeah, we need to move on.
Dad Dicks, next team. Here's how I figured my draft. I just went left to right across the draft board, by the way.
Yeah, I got it.
So that's what we're doing.
Yeah, that's fine.
Dad Dicks came in needing another RB, a flex like everybody else needs, and a tight end. Their big picks this year were Najee at 55, very early, David Johnson at 18, and Jamar Chase at 25. Nick, how do you think Grimes did this year?
I think he has a lot of young players, and he's banking on a lot of upside. It's kind of like the players that Patty kind of like talking about that before, is that he's kind of going for that, waiting for those players to hit, and if they hit, he does really well. But aside from that, he's hoping that there's a lot of young players that are going to contribute massively to his team.
All right. Do you like what if you had to give a grade, or what do you think of the draft overall? Like, you like it, don't like it?
I thought it was fine. Like I didn't grade it, and I'm not going to sit here.
Sounds
and
like
try
a
to
C.
be
All right, Hillers, what'd you think?
C minus because I hate brittle teams. Okay, and this team is Najee Harris, DeAndre Hopkins, and the lottery tickets. And the one thing that I will give him credit for is he absolutely stole up on Jamal Williams at a time when everybody else was looking at a different guy that went for way more money. And that might well pan out for him. He's got a bunch of guys that, it's not inconceivable that they would pan out, but there's too many of them composing his entire roster for me to think that he's going to have, like a completely successful season. I think he's one injury away from a very bad place.
Okay. I gave his draft a B. I think.
Wait. So yeah, okay, C minus for me.
Yeah, I mean, coming in, look, he's coming in with Tom Brady, Antonio Gibson, DeAndre Hopkins, CeeDee Lamb. Like, that's a pretty good core. So, team-wise, he's got a solid team, so he's looking to fill these gaps. I gave his draft a B based on what he needed. I think a lot of it depended on, and we're going back to day of, a lot of it depends on David Johnson. Like, I think we all thought David Johnson was going to be a big part of that Texans backfield.
Yeah.
And from what we've seen in the preseason, he's not. He's their third down back. He's their Gio Bernard, their James White. He's that guy in that backfield now. Like, it's Philip Lindsay's backfield, and David Johnson is the guy they're dumping off to. Which, there's some value there, but that's not a guy you want to have to you don't want to have to rely on, right? So, and he's in his flex spot right now. So if he's not in the flex, then who are you plugging in? Okay, Jamar Chase. Well, Jamar Chase can't get open in the preseason.
Droppy.
Guy can't get open.
Mr.
All right,
Drops.
well, if Jamar Chase can't get open, then who are we looking at now? We're looking at Xavier Jones, Jamal Williams, Darnell Mooney, Mike Gesicki, and Jacoby Myers. Like, these are...
Any one of them could happen, right?
They could.
They could happen.
but like, I don't love where he's at. So,
Yeah.
like, draft day, I gave him, like, a B+. I thought he did a great job. The David Johnson pick, and I said this when I wrote this in my sheet, like, a couple days after I said a lot depends on David Johnson for the flex spot, and that's looking bad right now. That's looking very bad. And if a lot depends on that, then he's in bad shape. Darnell Mooney, I think, is probably his best pick at $3. I love that pick. I think that could really be. That could be great. And if Jamar Chase, who hasn't played football in 2 years competitively,
old droppy,
if he can find his way into value, then that's going to help him a lot. But
at $25, good luck.
If those two things don't happen, then this team's really going to struggle. And that's why I put him in a B right now.
David Johnson or Gio Bernard, who scores more this year, Mike?
Gio.
Oh, God.
I think Giovanni.
I'll take David Johnson on that one, I think.
Okay, all right. Gio's on
The
Nick's
fact
team.
that you asked that question, though,
context.
is pretty telling.
I know, right? It's telling, right?
Yeah. All right.
Giovanni. Yeah, Giovanni's.
Nick's what, 5th pick for running back?
Nick, of course, picks Gio Bernard. Like, Nick is never...
he loves it.
He started the Gio Bernard fan club. Yeah.
He loves him in Gio.
Yeah. Wounded Ducks,
Giovanni,
next team.
Giovanni, not Gio. He hates Gio.
Yeah, he hates Gio. Giovanni. That's the name his mother gave him.
Giovanni.
Wounded Ducks are the next team here. Wounded Ducks they came in with a lot of money also. They came in keeping Myles Gaskin, Kenny Golladay, Mike Williams, and Zach Moss. But they needed a few more keepers. They needed an RB1 and a wide receiver 1, a quarterback, and a tight end. They had a lot that they were looking for in the draft.
A running back 1 and a running back 2.
Yeah, maybe, right? His big picks, he grabbed Miles Sanders back at $28, who he had for $63 last year. So, hey, half-price discount. Less than half-price.
Discount.
Robert Woods at $36. Travis Etienne at $38. Seemed great at the time.
Whoop, whoop.
Michael Thomas,
didn't.
Well, we'll talk about that. Michael Thomas at $15, who he would have had to keep for $22. No, he threw him back and got him back for $15.
Because he's injured forever, right?
He got A.J. Dillon at $18, Juju at $7, and his quarterback is Joe Burrow for $2. So we'll start with you, Hillers. What do you think of old Dez/Chris McDonald's draft?
Okay, well, I hate it, but I realize that almost half the people in America believe either that Joe Burrow is good or Tua Tua is good. Almost half the people in America believe one of those two things. If either one, if any of that 50% is correct, he's got himself a low-end number one quarterback. Congrats. Okay. His bet on Travis Etienne, I always thought was questionable because James Robinson is good. And he was always good, and he was always going to be good, and they were always going to have him in the game. So
wait, hang on. Sorry to interrupt, but his bet on Travis Etienne, when you say that, Travis Etienne's on his bench on this on the draft board right now. So there wasn't a big bet on him.
Is he? Because, I mean, who else are we looking at here?
Okay, Gaskin and Sanders.
The running backs I like best on his running back core are Zach Moss, as we've spoken of.
Gaskin, Sanders, and Zach Moss. Then
sure. and Gaskin. I'm not a massive I'll wait to see on Sanders. You know what I mean? I think you're kind of taking. None of these are known for sure top end number one talents. They are all thought to be, okay, and that has happened a lot, gone the other way, right? And so we'll wait and see. But that there's not a dyed in the wool number one stud on here. There is a lot of guys with a lot of good hype, and he really waited on his cash and sat on it to get to that AJ Dillon place. And you know what? If Aaron goes down in Green Bay, then maybe he's got another one running back on his hand. He's very close to having such a devastating running back core, but right now I don't see it. And I think it's that way throughout his whole team. Like his wide receivers as well. Loads of potential, and I love where he's going with this draft, and I've been in that place myself, and I have drafted teams like this. So I'm not hating on the strategy, but man, right now I just don't feel like it's enough to speak of to make it through this season or his division.
Nick,
D.
I didn't like Dez's draft as itself. I thought that he was banking on a lot of upside players that were kind of waiting to see how the committees are going to play out and how the players are going to play out. I don't know. Dez's team seems like a very C plus team to me as a draft itself. And the way that the news is breaking now post the draft isn't looking favorable upon his team.
Oh wait, I forgot Amon-Ra St. Brown C+.
Getting Michael Thomas is great. Getting back Michael Thomas is great. And I think that you don't know what you're doing, right? You can only base your draft on the information that's available to you. He bought the best players that were available during the draft, and I think that he did a great job during the draft to get to build the best team he could as of August 13th. 2 weeks.
Can I, Nick? I'm sorry. Can I interrupt and jump in? So as we go through these teams real quick, let's be clear that we need to kind of separate two things. One, what we thought of the draft on draft day and the job they did, and then two, let's also talk about since draft day what's happened. How we think that's going to affect their team going forward, right? There's two separate. There's two separate conversations to have about each team.
I definitely feel like of the three of us, like I am definitely focusing on the draft. Hillers is definitely focusing on the post draft, and you're doing a great job of playing like the intermediate.
No, Etienne always sucked.
We can all do both, honestly. Like if and feel free to kind of just kind of segregate both if you want to. Like that's
But I'm saying is that I think that he did a great job during the draft of like building the best team that he could, and I think that
he had the furthest to go.
I think this is as a second draft in an auction league, and I think that it's a lot better than his team was last year, and he understood things a lot better. But I think that there's still a little bit of a learning curve of what the value of certain players are that needs to be able to do this, and I think that he did a lot better this year than he did last year, and we'll see how free agency plays out for him and what his team does. I think that his draft overall, like we said, is a C plus. His team hasn't done much better based on the news that's coming out, and I really don't want Personally, I would out Miles Gaskin again or Miles Sanders as my 1 or 2 running back.
All right. So based on what I said, Des needed coming in. The more this is a weird thing. Like
Yeah.
he seemed like somebody he waited so long, and Hill, as you kind of alluded to this, he waited so long to spend his money. It was like, where are you? Like, what's your plan here? And like his draft just kind of happened, and then you let it simmer, and you look at it, and like when I was going through my things, I'm like, all right, what did he need in his draft? And I'm looking at what he needed, and then I go back and I'm like, what did he draft? And the more I kind of tried to correlate those two things, the more I liked this draft. The more I really was like, wow, he kind of hit the notes he needed to hit here, in that he had a lot of money to come in, and that always means there's a lot of ways this can go wrong. But I don't think it did. Like, look, you can say like, oh, you should have went out and just got some great running backs. Well, they're not there, right? There's only 2 or 3 great running backs available to go get. So go get what you can and hope some of them pop. Like, that's at some point. He bought Miles Sanders for $63 last year. He got him back for $28 this year. Okay, that's a guy who might end up being a great RB1 this year. You don't know. Like, we don't. Like, he is.
That's $62. Like, who knows what Miles Sanders could have gone for? Like, that's the market. That's not Dez getting him at a steal. That's the market saying that someone else only valued him at 27 and Dez valued him.
But Nick, who's the RB1 in Philly right now?
Yeah.
Oh, I hear what you're saying. Like, Miles Sanders.
Yeah, he's the guy. He's the guy. There's a new
RB1s are a $30 value flat.
Let me keep going here. He's the RB1 in Philly right now. Dez got him for $28, and it's a new regime in Philly. So look, he just got an RB1 who went for $62 last year for less than half the price that was there last year. And look, if he doesn't work out, he doesn't work out. But the other option was to spend $60 on Josh Jacobs. And Dez was like, no, I'm not doing that. I'd rather spend $28 on Miles Sanders to see what happens, because then that allows me to spend $36 to get Robert Woods, who is one of the most consistent wide receivers in the league the last couple of years. He's fantastic. Right. That's a great buy for him. That also allows me to get a first-round running back. I could see why you hate this draft, Hillers, because you disrespect Robert Woods all the time. You're a big James Robinson guy. And I can understand why you hate this draft, but he went out and got Travis Etienne was a first-round running back in the NFL draft. Dez went out and got him for $38, which is not something that happens typically in our league. If a running back is drafted in the first round in fantasy football, that guy typically goes for way more than $38. And because we think he's just going to be some kind of scat back device, kind of like weird, sketchy, like kind of weird play guy that they think, let's get him for $38. Well, maybe he is that guy this year, and that's fine. But next year, he might be the guy forever. The guy scored like 189 touchdowns or some shit in college. Like, the guy's an amazing running back.
A lot of people score a lot in college. Let me ask you this. Do you think Robert Woods is the second best running back or wide receiver in the NFL? Because that's what he costs. Or he's the second most costly wide receiver in our league. The second most. And
is that how you think cost works in a fantasy draft?
Well, if the cost does not match the level of the player's tier in his position by that much of a margin, you should be questioning your purchase. Okay,
right, so let's go over how much Mike Davis costs for you when we get to your team, and if you think he is that ranked running back in the NFL.
$1 more than Travis Etienne? Is that what you mean? Yeah. Or no, wait. I'm sorry.
So speaking of
way less than that is what I meant. The number one running back. Remember how we were both agreed that number one running back?
So let me get this straight. Do you think how much people go for in the draft is like should be what rank they are to finish the year?
No, I'm saying that what they're valued in the draft should match their value in their player at their position, and his doesn't even close.
Really? You think that?
I do.
Okay. So
you're saying wait?
So let's talk about
receiver on this season.
So can I respond? Let's talk about Calvin Ridley, who went for $12. Do you think he's like the 47th best wide receiver in the NFL?
You want to make a Calvin Ridley versus Robert Woods bet? Because I'll do that.
No,
too.
don't move the goalposts on me. You said how much
That's
somebody
hardly
costs.
moving the
absolutely,
goalpost.
absolutely. Based on Hiller's
Don't
logic,
can
Robert
we
Woods
can
is
we
gonna
can we
score
focus
3
on what
times
you're
points per game.
saying in that you think how much somebody costs on their salary should determine how good they are in fantasy football?
No, I'm saying if you accurately measured their value, then it
Yeah.
would. But
So
I don't
you're
think it's
saying
even
Calvin
close.
Ridley's
I think
value
Robert
is
Woods isn't
$12.
anywhere-
So
No.
I'll take
I don't
Calvin
think-
Ridley.
I don't think that. I don't think
You
that was
take
accurately
Robert
measured either.
Woods, and
No,
we can have our bet.
No, because that wasn't accurately measured.
My God, Hillers, Calvin Ridley costs a third of what Robert Woods costs.
Yeah,
Why
and
would
he
you
was
not
a-
take him?
And he was a steal. I didn't have the money, or I would have done. Actually, I think he was a keeper.
Okay, well let's
Yeah,
run through it a little bit.
Calvin Ridley was a keeper, so that's why I didn't draft him at $12 because he was a keeper. I would have absolutely done. I would have crawled all over
How
myself
much would
to
you have
get
spent on
Ridley.
Calvin Ridley?
Easily in the 20s.
All right, Hillers.
Oh, put your money where your mouth is, Merrill. Ridley versus
I'd have
Woods on
spent.
this season.
I'll tell you this. I'd have spent
Hang on,
$45 to get
hang on.
Calvin Ridley.
Ridley
You wouldn't.
versus
Based on this
Woods.
logic-
If you're so high
Based
on
on this
Robert
logic.
Woods,
I'm not high on Robert Woods.
Logic.
I'm saying
you're
you
apparently
have
saying
no
he's worth
concept.
as much as the second best wide receiver
No, hang
in the
on,
league.
hang on.
You know what?
hang on.
I'm just gonna leave you
Hang on,
saying,
whoa, time out,
Nick,
time
Nick.
out,
Let me,
time
let me,
out,
Nick.
time
I got
out,
one
time
thing
out,
to say, and
time
I'm
out,
done.
time out.
I'm just gonna say, Hillers.
Hillers.
I would have let you spend $25 on Calvin Ridley, okay? And we'll just leave the conversation there, and we'll move on.
We will leave it there. As your division winner for the division you were in last year, I'm happy to leave
All
it
right,
there.
Nick. What's your thought?
Well, I want to go back to this conversation here real quick and just ask Hillers a couple of questions. Hillers, who would you rather have, Robert Woods or Cooper Kupp?
Kupp.
Kupp, okay. And who would you rather have, Cooper Kupp or Amari Cooper?
He's looking at values before he tells you this.
No, he's not.
No, I know he has an agenda that he's been working on. I know I'm walking into a trap, and I'm just saying.
Do you not have rankings of these guys? Like who you'd rather have?
Yeah, but I'm not staring at him right now. I'm looking at the teams.
I'm
'cause we
You
were
don't
doing
have to
it
stare
Monday.
at them. You should know. These are top flight guys. You should know which guy you'd rather
Yeah,
have.
all three of these players are in that same.
They all have
tier of
upsides.
moving-
They all have their own individual scenarios.
Yes, they all kind of have upside.
I'm not going to play this game. This is a trap. No, I refuse to. play
Look,
this game.
it's clear. Hiller said he's damn near willing to spend up to $29 on Calvin Ridley if he was available in the draft this year, Nick. So look, I think at this point we know. Let's move on because that's insane, crazy, insane.
Robert Woods is most valuable receiver.
Look,
locked
anybody
in.
who's willing to spend $29 on Calvin Ridley in an auction draft this year is crazy, and we should probably just.
You know how
move
many
on at
points
this point.
Calvin Ridley had last
Let's move on.
season? 281. All
My
right, that is
God.
number one
move
with
on.
the
Let's
bullet
move on.
numbers.
And you'd spend $29 on him?
It was 50 more points than Robert Woods.
Oh my God, that's
So
crazy to
insane.
me.
I don't understand your Robert
Good
Woods.
move.
I
love.
know you don't understand. That's the funny part. All right, let's move on to the Choops here. By the way, I give
hilarious.
Dez a B plus on his draft because on draft day I thought he did exactly what he needs to do. He got a first-round running back for $38, which if it worked out, and it may or may not work out, who knows? James Robinson's there. I get that. James Robinson had a great year last year. I get that. But for $38, he threw something out there that said, if this works out, I've got myself a starter keeper running back next year for $41, which is not terrible. And that's somebody.
Right. So you feel the same way about Dez's draft as I do about Patty's. is
Yeah,
basically what it
probably.
comes down to.
Yeah, sure. Like, I get that. Like, that's something you can build off of. I like that. He went back. He got himself Michael Thomas, who, again, one of the best receivers in the league. That's a guy you can build off of. He found himself a core that he can work off of. Miles Sanders, that's a guy at $28. He's like 24 years old. Sure, it hasn't worked out yet. Maybe with a new coaching regime, maybe something happens this year. He found values out there where there is a chance to have some long-term keeper options there. And I think there's more long-term keeper options there than some other teams that we've talked about so far. That's why I give this draft a B+.
Once
When
again,
I talked
we do
about
need
the
to move
difference between draft day value and what I predict for a team this year, there's a big difference on this team. I'll tell you right now because
we got to keep going though, guys. We talked about
we have because in the power rankings, I'll tell you right now, I have this team at the very bottom this year, but I think he built himself a team where he can build off of. Let's go to the Choops here.
A for effort, Des.
Yeah, Choops. Choops needed a wide receiver 2. What I said, like everybody else, a flex, a tight end, and they needed some values. They needed to build the core. So their big picks, they got Chris Godwin at 32, Chase Edmonds at 36, and from there on they were kind of filling out they were kind of in dollar days after that. They had really good keepers and had a really good lineup from there. So we'll start. I don't know who we started with last time. Nick, we'll start with you this time.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that he needed to come out with a wide receiver 2 and a tight end, and his key pick was coming out with Chase Edmonds. I think his worst pick was Chris Godwin, and I'm not sure if JD wanted Godwin or if that was a Estrick Homer pick coming out. Like I feel like
it was also for context. At that point in the draft, it was almost kind of a best left at tier situation. Also,
I mean, he's clearly better than Calvin Ridley, who would have gone for like $28 or $29.
That's not what I was saying, and you know it. But go, please continue, Nick.
No, I think that's just what it comes down to. Is I'm not sure. I might, when it comes down to it, personally, I don't think I like Chris Godwin for $32, just because I feel like there's a lot of mouths to feed in that Tampa offense. I'm not really sure what that translates into, and I'm not sure if JD wanted him or if that was a Estrick picking that, and I don't know if JD necessarily came out with all the pieces that he necessarily wanted from this draft. Again, I think this is like a C plus ish draft.
Hillers.
And yeah, I agree with a lot of the things that Nick said. Obviously, this wasn't JD's draft or his decisions, and I know Estrick did his level best to do his best for him, and I think he had maybe not a lot of misses here. I think there's a couple of guys in here that could surprise people. There's certainly nothing too terribly wrong, with the team that has Derrick Henry and guys like Chris Carson and Stefon Diggs on it. I don't feel like he's going to sink to the absolute bottom. But overall, especially with 4 running backs, when you can have 5, and when running backs are at such a premium, just sort of the general tenure of the non-keeper guys, it's a pretty mediocre product. I'm gonna give it just a C.
Yeah, I'm a C. I agree. A C is pretty. Like, I think it's a pretty good draft. Like, and a C is kind of a compliment because it was JD wasn't there, and for Tyler / Estrick, who was drafted for him, it was his first ever auction draft, and I think a C is a commendable effort on it. Honestly, like, I think he did a great job. Yeah, is Chris Godwin the guy he wanted? No. But Chris Godwin as your wide receiver 2 is really good. Like, I think that's really good.
Well, and also, did he know that at the time, there was not a ton of better talent hanging around?
Great. And he overpaid for Chase Edmonds at flex, sure. Like, I think he overpaid. I ended up grabbing James Conner for $5. Chase Edmonds went for $36. That's a gigantic chasm there between those two. Like, sure, James Conner is completely boring and maybe terrible, but like, and Chase Edmonds, this may be his breakout year, so yeah, maybe that works out. But down on the bench, he's got Tyler Boyd for $4, which may be my favorite pick of the draft, honestly.
Oh yeah, amazing! Like, amazing
great pick. Nelson Aguilar for $1, which is another amazing pick. He, by all accounts, he is the guy in Patriots camp who every pass is going to. Everybody loves what Nelson Aguilar is doing in Patriots camp. And, the rest of them are kind of meh, but you can do fab. You can pick up guys off waivers. I think JD had a really good set of keepers, and I think, I think the draft didn't hurt him, and it filled out some gaps he needed, probably, and I think the rest of it can be, he can work with it on waivers. I don't think there was anything that was hurt by this draft.
You're right, he could have a sneaky good wide receiver core.
Yeah, I think for sure he can.
Fun fact, Chase Edmonds' highest inflation from last year, up $33 than what he went for last year. And you really should have bid on him more.
It's a weird thing with him, right? Like nobody believes in him. Like it's like everybody's like, oh, he's so
No
great.
one does.
He's this amazing talent. Like just get him in space. He's so good. Look, get anybody in space and they're fucking good. It's the NFL, first of all.
I
But
could be pretty good if you got me in enough
get me in
space.
space, right? Like whatever that means. But like
If you got me 40 yards away from any
he's
NFL players,
weird,
I'd go and go.
He's this weird guy. Like he's not like the J.D. McKissick, like scat back kind of Gio Bernard, James White guy. Like where everybody's like, oh, just get Chase Edmonds. But I think people are starting to give up on him and be like, nah, he's probably gonna end up being James White. I think that's probably what he is. Like right. But like this is his probably last chance to be like this is it. Like if it doesn't happen this year, I think we're out on Chase Edmonds at this point.
Right.
All right. Anyway, I think solid draft. I don't think it was hurt, and pretty good job, Esther.
Yeah.
Hitmen are the next team.
Oh, also, thank you for coming, Esther. That was amazing to come
really
up from
was.
Florida. It was so great to have you, and we really liked having you there. That was amazing.
Yeah.
Shit drafter.
Shit draft.
Shit proxy.
All right, next team. Lost my
Hitmen.
screen. Hitmen needed wide receivers, needed a tight end, and needed some flex like every other team out there. Big picks for Hitmen were Julio Jones at 26, Cooper Kupp at 33, Melvin Gordon at 23, Antonio Brown at 13, and Devontae Smith at 8, I guess. I'll just kind of go into what my strategy was. I'm on the podcast, so we can, as we hit our teams, we can kind of go through that real quick. My thoughts were 17-week season needed. I probably wanted a deeper team. I wanted somebody who could. I wanted a team that could withstand injuries a little more than my team last year, especially. I wanted to spread out $100 over 3 to 4 players. I was looking at like Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, Julio, Amari Cooper, Deontay Johnson, Godwin, those guys. I wanted Etienne maybe. And based on if I spent on a running back or wide receiver for my flex, my strategy was going to change. So I wanted to get like 3 to 4 $30 players. Overall, when it finished,
Have you guys ever gone to a website and like clicked on I really want to learn how to cook a good steak, and you click on the steak and it says, instead of just saying like here are the ingredients, here's how you do it, it's back when I was a child, I always loved looking at cows, and looking at cows, I always wondered what cow would give me the piece of meat.
Yes,
that is exactly what Merrill's been doing right now. Like no one gives a fuck about what your strategy is.
No, but
just tell us what the fuck you're doing in your draft.
Have you never actually done that though, Nick? Because that's what they all do. All the top cooks are like,
oh my god,
here's what I think a cow loves about its life, and that's how I make the best steak. That's what they all do. They all do that.
all right. Well, then I'll stop. I apologize.
No, you did fine.
You guys go ahead.
On you. No, I'm defending you. I think he's shitting on you unnecessarily.
The reason I do this is I like when it came to you guys draft, I was going to ask you guys the same thing, what your strategy was going
right.
on. So
it's good to know.
That's why I did it, and I think I don't know. I feel like people might be interested in it a little bit, but it's okay.
Strategy is what they crave.
We're already an hour and a half into this.
So whoever is still here wants to hear it.
This is our draft podcast, dude. What's the hurry? Like, what's like? This is
yes. Yeah. Whoever is still listening is gonna listen. Okay, so.
Anyway, I feel like I achieved a lot of depth. I enjoy. I think my team is a lot different than it was last year. I went very stars and scrubs. This year I went very top to bottom depth, and I like this team better. Nick, we'll start with you. What are your thoughts?
I actually thought that you needed running back you needed wide receivers and a tight end. Obviously, like you said, your best picks were Connor, Brown, Smith, and Jones. I didn't really love your pick of Melvin Gordon, but I mean, what are you going to do? Like, I thought your draft was, you address what you need to do. You know what you're doing in this league, clearly. Like, you know how to draft. You've drafted so many teams for so many different people, including yourself by now, that you know where your values are and you know what your strategies are, and you were able to stick with it. And I think you did a great job of sticking with your story from your childhood dream of looking at a cow and seeing what kind of meat it was going to be. So I like your draft. I think you did a good job.
Hellers.
I was a baby. What I first hated about your team was the stupid face. No, no, I kind of agree with your strategy, Mike, and I think you drafted a good team and a robust team this year. I think that you can play matchups with a lot of guys in favorable positions to do that. With a couple of studs mixed in there, which strikes me as sort of like the championship teams of the Tower of Lovenses of old. You know what I mean? Where it was just like, where are you gonna fail? You know what I mean? You can have 3 guys go down and you're still fine. That's the team that tends to make it to the championship without blowing all their free agent money, and then can like pick up guys on the back end if they get hurt. And the thing that strikes me about your team this year that hasn't always struck me about your team is that you do have that sort of full slate, right? There's not an obvious weakness where you're brittle here, and I think that's the biggest strength about this team. And I'll do a bit of a spoiler for later, as I've got you as a division winner.
Yeah, I go ahead, Nick.
If I can revise something that I said earlier. What I do like about your team is that, I mean, you were able to get Julio Jones and Cooper Kupp and Melvin Gordon and Antonio Brown. Like, those are huge players. Those are huge.
And if he starts Will Fuller on the week that he's good,
it doesn't matter. It doesn't.
Who knows what week that is, though?
What if it's week 10?
Like, that's just right off the cuff. That's right off the cuff. Like, I don't know. You had a good draft. You had a really good draft, and I really do like it.
What Nick's saying is I convinced him with my analysis. That
I appreciate that. What I'll say is there's not a player on this team that I don't feel comfortable plugging into my lineup. Well, other than Will Fuller, obviously, who's out week 1.
But what about the 1 week?
Yeah, I'm obviously he's out 1 week, but like I'm honestly comfortable plugging any of these people into my lineup on week 1, and I'm pretty happy about that. So
it's a mark of a solid team.
I got some upside with Devontae Smith and Justin Fields. Those are rookies that might, who knows, they might blow up. They might be long-term guys. I got some depth and some reliability. I got James Conner, Will Fuller for cheap. I like that.
Honestly, you hardly need Justin Fields to be the next year. When Murray was doing 378 on the last season.
Yeah,
right?
No, like Kyler's great, but quarterbacks get to a point with our current scoring where it's like, is it worth it to keep him, right? Like,
yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah, so like Justin Fields for $1, if he's Kyler Murray, if he's the same as Kyler Murray, well, thank you for the $12, and I'll just keep him instead. You know, like it's so anyway. Next team is the duplex. No, sorry. Next team is Hillers.
Oh
shit! I skipped you, Hillers, in my
That's
analysis.
Fine. That's fine. I'm okay with it.
We're gonna do this on the fly. Let's see how good I do here. This is not gonna be great.
I'm the one team you haven't prepared to analyze.
I have not prepared at all to analyze. Hillers came in needing another wide receiver. He needed a quarterback. He needed a flex like everybody else. His big purchases were Justin Herbert at 7. He got Mike Davis at 29, Michael Carter at 24, shockingly, and Laviska Shenault at 11.
Vicious.
And he filled out the rest of his bench with some values. Nick, me and you will start here. I'll start with you, Nick. What do you think of Hiller's draft?
Again, so if we are isolating it to just the draft itself, is I think that the draft itself was a D+ at best. There was no particular buy that I necessarily liked, given the amount of depth that was available when those players came out.
Jesus, yikes!
Savage.
That is savage.
Also, my personal thought is that if you leave your draft with 2 quarterbacks and 2 tight ends, that you're leaving a position on the board that you could have done better with. There was just no player on this team that you drafted that I necessarily like. Mike Davis for 29, like, great, you filled in one of your running back spots, but Mike Davis was like your best pick, and that was getting a starting running back for $29 is a fantastic value. So good for you. But I thought that was your best pick, your best and only best pick of the draft.
Oh.
Yeah, I'll give this.
Where are you?
I mean, I'm gonna give this one a D plus, C minus ish on the fly here.
Oh man, haters all around.
Look, like who's your second best wide receiver right now? It's Laviska Shenault. Which look, it could work out. He's not a guy I want to rely on right away, right? Like he's not a guy that I'm looking to be. That's my wide receiver too. That's my guy. Let's go. But $11. Look, like long term, I like your draft a lot more than I like your draft for this year. I think is the thing. I think Laviska Shenault, if him and Trevor Lawrence hit it off and they kind of build a rapport and Trevor Lawrence is the guy, I think Laviska Shenault is the receiver you want in that wide receiver core. So it's not a guy I want to rely on week 1, 2, 3, but I think it could work out. Mike Davis at 29.
I think he is a top 5 wide receiver in a top 3 Swamp City
in Florida.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. Mike Davis, 29. Like that's exactly like I think you got him at value. I think that's going to return exactly what you wanted it to return. I think that's fine. In your flex spot, that is the most flex pick that has ever happened in our draft ever of all time. Like
I named him second round. Yeah. Second round of the namings is when I named Mike
Right,
Davis.
he is the most flex pick that has ever happened in our league.
Because he was lower than the good ones at that time, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, let's get my value now. I can't do one of the top ones because they'll go for nuts. So I'll pick Mike Davis.
Sure. Russell Gage at $1, I kind of really like. I think that might be a really good pick this year. Long term, probably not great. But I think this year, Julio Jones is gone. Somebody else is catching passes in that offense. Kyle Pitts is probably the guy, but it might be Russell Gage. And you
can't all be tight ends.
And you spent $1 on him. So what's the downside there? The answer, 0. There's none. So that's a great pick. I like that. I don't understand the Gerald Everett for $3 pick when you've got Darren Waller. That seemed like a wasted roster spot and wasted money to me. I feel like there's some other guys you could have got. Again, who is it? Who could you have got? We can get into that. That's a long conversation. Part of me's mad because I was eyeing Gerald Everett.
But you'd have been willing to spend $4.
Yeah, which I wasn't because whatever, I got my tight end for $1 and they're all kind of the same at that point. But it's not, it's fine. Like your wide receivers are not great. Now we talked about your draft on draft day versus your draft post draft day. Your draft has gotten a lot better in recent days because with Travis Etienne,
James Robinson,
right, going down for the season. Now you've got Joe Mixon and James Robinson as your running backs, which is really good. All of a sudden, Justin Herbert. You just need some wide receiver help at this point, and I think it could work. But yeah, I give you like a D+ on your draft.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so my turn. I'll give you my philosophy. I don't know how you guys are giving me Ds when my flexes are Davis or Carter if he pans out, right? It's like that's rough when I've got a top wide receiver, a top tight end, top quarterback. Now here's the thing.
What do you mean by top wide receiver? Is this a Robert Woods level we're talking about?
Allen Robinson.
Wait, that's not part of your draft, though. That's not part of your draft.
No, but it's like all I need is for one of the 4 guys. And here's my draft strategy for this. I need one of 4 guys to pan out and be really great. And between the options that I have, knowing that I had almost nothing to spend on them, knowing that I was going to need to spend my money on running backs, I think I pick an excellent set of 4 guys, one of which could be totally awesome, probably more than one of which. Number 1, most likely, Levicius. Okay, but I did not as much research this year as I should have done, but among what I've done, I heard nothing but excellent things to say about Hardman and Gage and Edwards as well, and I don't mind spending $5 on the lot of them at all. I think they're going to all overperform those values, right? And that they could easily be plugged in an emergency. Joe Mixon, I hated keeping Joe Mixon at $61. I loathed it.
That's not part of your draft. Let's stick to the draft.
Deep in my soul.
Stick to the draft. Stick to the draft.
In context, knowing that was a thing, I had to find as much value in the round that I could to get second and third backups to him and James. And when you look at what some of the other running backs went for at their tier and at their value, I have no complaints with my decisions with Davis and Carter at 29 and 24 respectively.
So you'd rather, like, and this is a direct comparison, you made the choice to trust Mike Davis at 29 versus Miles Sanders at 28.
I think Sanders went after Davis. I think I picked Davis pretty early. It had it been one versus the other, maybe a coin flip for me. But well,
that's what I'm saying. Like that, they went for basically the same price. Who would you rather have? Coin flip right now. Like if you had to choose, if you could make a trade right now, if Dez was like, "I'll give you Miles Sanders at 28 for Mike Davis at 29," what would you say?
I'd take Sanders, but not by a ton. Not by a huge amount.
I don't think it's a ton either. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, not by a huge amount. So I'm totally satisfied with the values I got those players at, and if either one of them end up matching even a third of their preseason hype, I'll be thrilled to death. And for Gerald Everett, I understand what you're saying that you shouldn't draft 2 tight ends. I disagree with you strongly on the 2 quarterbacks thing because that just makes you a brittle team. You're one injury away from scouring the waiver wires for some punk at that point. But for 2 tight ends, I do get it. I was kind of thinking just draft a guy I didn't think would, and I didn't really. This was maybe I think my first pick of the draft. I was just trying to scout out values, and I knew tight end was very thin, and this guy was considered a sleeper and maybe a guy that could break into that conversation of being tight end / wide receiver. Which would you rather have? And so I put in 3, and no one contested it. So here I am.
Yeah, sure.
But I don't love my team overall. If I had to grade myself, I'd C+.
Okay. Duplex came in. Duplex needed another running back and kind of needs to build some long-term keepers. They had Dalvin Cook at 57, Devontae Adams at 26, with an Aaron Rodgers probably departing next year. Jerry Jeudy at 12 and Mark Andrews at 17. So like this team next year is brutal. Like there were no keeper values.
That's not the
beyond
criteria
this year.
For the draft grade is what you are next year, though.
That exactly not the criteria, but it is the criteria for grading a draft when that is your premise coming into the draft.
Goalpost moved.
When that is your criteria coming into the draft, when that is where you are as a team, what is your plan to fix where you are as a team? And that's what they needed to do. Their big picks were Javonte Williams at 26, Odell Beckham at 9, Jalen Waddle at 11, Henry Ruggs at 1, J.D. McKissick at 9, and Aaron Rodgers at $10. Hillers, what are your thoughts on the Duplexes draft?
I wish I'd had $10 to spend on Aaron Rodgers. I think he's going to have another amazing season before he retires and goes and hosts Jeopardy or whatever he wants to do. But, I mean, this team didn't need that much to become a top-level team. He banked hard on a couple of guys that could go either excellent or terrible, including Leonard Fournette and I would say McKissick and maybe, to an extent, even Javonte Williams. These are unproven quantities, right? And so if these pan out the way he banked his draft on his own judgment of players, which I love. It's a strong play. It's evincing confidence in your own judgment. But fantasy gives not a shit about your judgment, and if the fates decide to wang you, you're done. And none of these guys are for sure lockups. But where's the misspend here? You know what I mean? Of all the teams in all the league, his top player, Dalvin Cook, he bought 2 years ago.
Can I answer before you move on?
$57.
Can I answer your question?
Sure.
$10 on a handcuff.
No, I don't.
I'm okay with
that
it.
was a misspend. I think it's because
When you spent $57 on the first one, talk to J.K. Dobbins about how much a handcuff should be cost. I mean, like I'm not mad about it.
Alexander came out towards the end of the draft, and I think that it's just that's where they had money.
07 was what Patty spent, by the way.
And you got one more guy that now that if something goes awry, he's got a pick of a waiver wire. I don't hate it. He's not among my playoff teams, but I don't hate the draft. I'll give it a B.
That's like your highest grade yet.
No,
this is your favorite draft. This is your best draft of all teams so far.
No, I gave a B before. I think I gave a B plus earlier.
To who?
We'll have to watch the tape, but I'm sure I gave at least a B.
All right. So Dave is Hiller's favorite draft. Nick, what do you think?
I think this is so. I think that this is my least favorite draft of everything that of all the teams, just because I don't like. Yeah, I mean, he didn't need much, yet somehow he didn't accomplish what needed to be done. Like, I think that Melvin Gordon's not going to go anywhere barring an injury. And I think that having Javonte Williams, like, who is his big guy that he spent money on, like, I don't think that this year Javonte Williams is the answer. And I don't think that having Javonte Williams and Aaron Rodgers as your guys that you're spending money on for the draft coming in was going to be the answer to what needed to be done to win this league. I think that you have a lot of great pieces, but you have Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams, which is great, and Dalvin Cook, which is great. Mark Andrews, who's fine, like, but I don't think that Mark Andrews has really been like, and maybe I just don't care. Maybe I just don't follow like who Mark Andrews is enough to know that he's worth $17. But Jerry Jeudy,
you don't follow Mark Andrews?
I don't follow Mark Andrews. He's not on my Twitter feed. I don't know.
What does that mean exactly? Maybe I don't follow Mark Andrews enough to know enough about Mark Andrews.
A good enough friend of Mark Andrews.
There was just nothing about this draft. It seemed like a very Dave draft, and it seemed very kind of like under the radar. But Dave is really good at finding players through free agency, and I know he's a very active owner. So I'm sure that he'll be able to piece this together, but based purely on what happened in the draft, like this just is very. It's not even like oh, I got Frank Gore and Keenan Allen, like those names that aren't flashy that like are going to win you the league. Like it's just like. There are names that are not flashy because they are not flashy names. Like there's nothing about this draft that makes me like it.
It's the Bilal Powell of drafts.
So here's what I'll say about this draft. I think this draft, like, it's not flashy at all because, like, if you look at it, to me, this is Dave trying to build a core. Like, I think, and I don't know whether that was his intention going in or not, but looking at this team, top to bottom, like, he's building a long-term core. He got Javonte Williams, a rookie running back, who is probably going to get a lot of time for Denver right now, for $26, which that could be a keeper for fucking, like, 8 years, right? Like, that's a guy, if he works
Michael
out,
Carter.
Could be amazing, okay? So that's his RB2, right? He got Jalen Waddle for $11, a top wide receiver pick out of this draft. That's a guy who maybe you could build a team around for a while. Henry Ruggs, $1, right? Like, this is a guy who was a first or second round pick for the Raiders last year. I can't remember exactly what he was, but he was a top pick for the Raiders last year. Built around him. J.D. McKissick, not very exciting, obviously. That's a guy, if you got to plug him in, it's whatever, it's fine. But to me, this is Dave building like a core, like a long-term core that is someone like, because we talk about Dalvin Cook, Devontae Adams, like we talked about, like this team in a year is not going to be great, and I think Dave realized that, and he went out and he got guys who, a year from now, if it works out like people are thinking about it, he got a bunch of guys he's going to be able to keep next year.
But could be great this year. But
also,
be good this
exactly, year. But also might work this year too. And I think for that reason, like I don't love the draft either, Nick. I'm with you. Like it's not a team I want to field every week right now. I'm going to give it a C-, but but I think Dave knew what he needed to do in this draft, and I think he went out and got some guys that could maybe break his way this year, but definitely have some long-term possibilities.
By the way, Mike, I think I gave your team a B+. If I didn't grade it,
all right. Thank you.
You were among my Bs.
We good to move on? Ween. So. Ween is next.
Oh, the Ween. The most elegant of teams.
Ween came in needing a QB, some solid wide receivers, and a tight end. His big picks were Lamar Jackson at 12, Robbie Anderson 11, Trey Sermon 33, Kyle Pitts at 13, and Latavius Murray at $10. We'll start with Nick. What do you think of Andy's draft?
Best team of the draft. Great team. Good job, Andy. He loves hearing that stuff. Realistically, though, no. No, to your point, like he absolutely that's exactly what he needed. He needed a quarterback, a wide receiver, and a tight end. He definitely addressed the tight end and quarterback position. Not really sure if he addressed the wide receiver issue that he had. I guess he had Robbie Anderson and I don't know. I again, it's a very Andy draft. Like it was good. Like not a bad team, just like a very C plus. Like you got Trey Sermon. My notes were a lot better before. I like AJ Green for $2. I think that the fact that AJ Green's fallen to $2 is ridiculous.
All right, we're gonna move on. We're talking about AJ Green now. Hillers, what are your thoughts on Andy's team?
Little bit of weakness in the wide receiver too. Wish he drafted 5 running backs instead of 4, but I mean, where's the true weakness in this team? I think this team is going to do a lot of damage. Honestly, I'm kind of a Lamar Jackson believer. I don't know how anybody isn't after last season and after what he's shown this upcoming. If Saquon Barkley isn't absolutely missing a leg, and if Trey Sermon is just a serviceable flex, honestly, he doesn't even need to be at number 2 if Chubb just comes up and it makes Latavius Murray just gravy. And while there's nothing at all thrilling about his wide receiver core, any 2 to 3 of them, based on matchups, could go in on any given week. I think this is quite a strong
right, but you have
team.
to be able to know who to start. Like you asked, like where's the weakness? The weakness is absolutely the wide receiver core.
Indecision. This team could be done in by mismanagement. But I actually think Andy is one of our better managers, and it kind of depends on schedule, and absolutely you're gonna have days where you'll be like, there are 3 guys I could have started, and I started 2 of the wrong ones. I mean, that's gonna happen to just about every team that has good players. The only team that doesn't happen to is a team where all their players are shit. It's like you're gonna have some.
No, but we're talking about the draft. We're talking about the draft here. What do you think of this draft?
And so to build a team that is like that, I think he had quite a good draft. Given the money and the constraints they had, I think he invested in the right place. I give it a B. I think it's good. I think he's a solid, good team.
I'm giving it a C-. Maybe the best running backs in the league, not part of the draft. So, as a draft, he needed wide receivers, and his wide receivers are a fucking dumpster fire. Like, they're abysmal. This might be the worst wide receiver core in the league. Like, it is atrocious. He's starting Brandon Ayuk and Robbie Anderson at wide receiver week 1. Like, that's bad. Like, I don't want any part of that. I'm sorry. Like, I appreciate Brandon Ayuk. I think there's a lot of potential. I think there's a lot of potential there. Like, maybe. That's not a guy I want to have to rely on week 1. I don't know what the hell is going to happen with that team. So, I don't want any part of that at all. Kyle Pitts for $13 is one of my favorite picks of the draft, so I appreciate that. Like, I think that's a great pick by Andy. Then I rolled down his bench. Adam Troutman, I guess. Great backup tight end. Okay, cool.
A lot of the coverage has him as
I don't want to start any of these people on his bench ever. at all. Like, nobody on his bench do I ever want to have to plug into a lineup. Period. Ever. Like, they're all, like, I don't want any part of them.
How do you
like,
really feel? How do you really feel?
Like, I'm sorry, Andy. Like I've been a fan of all of your drafts until this. Like, I don't understand. What happened to you, Andy? Who hurt you?
Wait, Mike. I got a question for you. Who did he spend more than $5 on that you can't stand?
What does that matter?
Because $5 is quite a minimal amount in the overall scheme of things. So, who did he spend more than $5 on that you just feel is worthless human?
Well, that's. Well, I don't think any of them are.
Okay, well.
But here's the question, Hillers. Who do you feel comfortable like he's going to be starting Brandon Ayuk and Robbie Anderson against another team in this league week 1. Against 2 other teams in this league week 1. Which other teams?
We know which ones, don't we?
Which other teams in this league do you think he has an advantage over at wide receiver? And the answer is 0. That's the worst wide receiver in the league. It's not close. Like, it is abysmal. And you say, oh, well, that's just who he's starting. Maybe his bench has better people, and they don't. There's not depth. There's not an opportunity for any people on his bench to pop and work their way into that wide receiver.
No,
it's just not there. And
I can understand. The site has him losing to Nick and to presumably Cyborg Tony Romo, who hasn't started his lineup yet, but I know is going to post more than what his starting lineup is projected to post 108.5 points, which is bad.
So here's what I'll say. We've loved Andy's team every year, and it's never worked out for him. Andy, I fucking hate your team this year, and God bless you. You're probably going to win it all. So, I'm sorry, dude. Like, I hate your team. That shouldn't mean dick all to you, honestly, because it's your team. Why would you care what I think? But, I hate your draft. I hate your team. I'm sorry. So, love you, bud.
Hugs.
TTR.
Cyborg Tony Romo. Cyborg Tony Romo came in needing not much. They had maybe the best keepers the league has ever seen.
We all hate them.
They, I guess, needed a QB, some flex, and some depth stuff. Their big picks were Deontay Johnson at 20,
right?
Damian Harris at yeah. Oh, congrats on getting married, Roscoe. I think. I mean, I assume it went through. God bless you. I'm not. You know what? Congrats on getting married. We're not going to even bring in that kind of doubt, Roscoe. Congrats on all that.
I hope you're married to a goat. I hope the paperwork got messed up and that you're now clinically goat married.
Yeah, there you go. So,
yeah.
It's big picks. Deontay Johnson at 20, Damian Harris 19, Deebo Samuel 12, Dak at 10, and Jalen Hurts at 4. I don't remember where we started last time, so whoever didn't start last time, go first this time.
Doesn't matter.
That was me. And I will say this, is that I think that for a team that's as good as his is, if we isolate it to just the draft on what he was able to come out of the draft with, this is not a good team. I did not like the actual draft itself. But with that being said, when you look at it saying, okay, well, what's the starting lineup? Dak Prescott, all of his keepers, and then Deontay Johnson, oh, yeah, okay, this is a pretty good team. It's really hard to hate on his team as a whole, and he really, everyone needed a flex, and everyone needed a quarterback, and quarterback was deep enough that it was fine. Basically, as long as you walked out of the draft with the quarterback, you were good. But his team is just so good as it is that, oh, hey, I got the Deontay Johnson as my flex. Really? It doesn't matter what his flex is. His keepers are going to carry this team, and that's all that matters.
What's the grade on the draft?
Oh, I think on the draft itself, based on the players in black, I think it was a D+ at best. I think that his draft itself was horrible. But as
which picks specifically don't you like?
I don't like having. Okay, I don't like spending $10 on Prescott and then $4 on Hurts. I don't like spending $14 on quarterbacks total.
You don't want
to have
to
two.
spend $4 on Jalen Hurts? Wow, I think that puts you outside the
No,
norm.
I don't like spending. I don't like having. Again, you're asking me. I don't like having. You're spending money on a roster spot at that point, and there's valuable. That roster spot during the draft is capital, and it's worth more than whatever the dollars that you spend on it are. And I think that having
and what else?
the money on Dak Prescott and Jalen Hurts is a wasted spot in my.
All right.
book.
So what else? What else don't you like about his picks?
I don't like Damian Harris for 19 because I think spending $19 on a New England running back is a lot of money. I think that Deebo Samuel for $12 is a lot of money for a wide receiver in San Francisco that may or may not pan out. Deontay Johnson for $20 is good. Like Deontay Johnson at $20 is my favorite pick of his team. And aside from that, like there was no one that he walked out of the draft. It was Deontay Johnson and Dak Prescott were my two favorite picks of his for his team, and everything else is just filler. But that's all he needed to do for his team, though.
So you like Dak for 10, but the 4 he spent on Hurts, that brings him down to a D+.
With the $12 in cap room left on the table.
Yeah, he left $12 in cap room, plus spending $4 on a backup quarterback that arguably could be that. Yeah, I think that's money that he could have spent on another player and just given himself a better
thoughts.
Okay, well, me and Nick have clearly diverged on the 2 quarterback position. I'm not going to relitigate it. But he was right that this team didn't really need much in the way of keepers. And you could tell he was in a hurry. You could tell that he wanted to get through with it and get who he could get at a reasonable price. And he got all of that. If the guys that he bet in the low to mid 20s on pan out, he'll probably be champion again just off the strength of his keepers. But in terms of draft, D+. It was a middling effort, and didn't really pick up anything at extreme value or anything that I mean, except for with perhaps the exception of Hurts, who could be an excellent quarterback going forward. But again, that's one of those guys that you're betting on your judgment rather than on.
So clearly, you disagree with us, Nero. What do you think?
Yeah, this is my favorite draft of everybody, honestly. I look like as good as his keepers were, he came into this draft just looking for values, and there's not a single player he drafted that I think he didn't get at a value. Like I think every player he got was
Damian
below.
Harris number 1 for me in terms of value.
Damian Harris is below value. I think he got Damian Harris for a bargain.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that.
I don't think there's a single. You look at this roster. There's not a single player he got where I'm like, oh god, he spent too much on that guy. Like every player he got, I'm like, oh wow, that's great. There's good. Nope, that's good. That's good. Like there's nothing he picked that was bad, and that's all he was looking for. Honestly, like he spent a lot of money on his keepers coming through, which is fine because they're studs. And beyond that, he's like, just give me the values, baby. And that's what he got. So I love this draft. I give it an A. Jalen Hurts
Good minority
like
report.
Nick, I'm with you on the 2 quarterback thing for the most part. But if it's like a guy like Jalen Hurts where you're like, I don't know much about him, so I'll buy him cheap. If he works out, great. If not, and he sucks, and he's benched in a couple weeks, I got Dak Prescott for $10 on my bench, who I know is going to be good. Dak Prescott's been a top 5 quarterback for the last 3 years, so boom, I'm done.
His leg fell off.
Like the only time 2 quarterbacks works is if you draft one quarterback who is kind of like a steady guy, and then you kind of have an upside guy on your bench,
right.
and that's where it works. And I think that's what he did. I got no problem with that. I think there's no fault with this. Cole Kmet for $1. Cole Kmet fucking blows. Whatever. That's going to be a drop. Whatever. It's $1. Who the hell cares? Like. This is a great draft. I give it an A. It's my favorite draft of everybody, and I fucking hate it. Fuck you, Roscoe.
Okay. So my thing is, so to be clear, it's not that I hate teams that draft 2 quarterbacks. Is that I don't like teams that walk out with 2 quarterbacks and 2 tight ends. I think that you're leaving a spot. You're walking out by drafting 2 quarterbacks and 2 tight ends. You are putting yourself in a position to not have 5 running backs and 6 wide receivers.
But there's so many of those positions that go out at $1 that I think it's a very marginal argument.
Yeah,
right.
I think it's hard to just blanket statement that. And in general, I agree with you, Nick. But I think there's situations where it works.
All the 6 wide receivers that are $1, they'll be available again in a couple of weeks.
Let's move to Iron Pirate next, because let's get into your strategy here, Nick.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Iron Pirate came in needing a QB, flex, and some depth. You got your big picks. You didn't have a lot of money, so you didn't have many. You got Raheem Mostert for $20, Cortland Sutton for 11, and Ryan Tannehill for 5. What was your strategy coming in, Nick? Let's start. We'll just start with your plan, and then Hillers and I will take it apart after you finish talking.
That sounds perfect, because that sounds just what I do for you guys. So that's perfect. No, it's like you said. It's. I feel like I didn't need much. I needed. I ultimately needed to walk out with a flex. My strategy has always been to not get a quarterback and to kind of wait on that. I don't like it was. I didn't have a lot of money, so I got the best players that I could get at the values, and I went all in on the players that I could afford, and I just kind of was able to get the team that I got with the money that I had available. Like, I know that's not very exciting, but that's kind of what it came down to. Is I had $5 budgeted for quarterback. I happened to get Tannehill. I had $20 budgeted for the best available running back. It happened to be Mostert. I wanted Sutton, and if I could get him, and it was like I had $15 slated for my number 1 wide receiver that I could get, and I got him for 11. So I was like, great. Like, it just happened to work out the way it did, and I happened to get these players at the right time in the draft that I was able to get.
Did you have guys you were targeting?
To be honest, the guys that I got were the guys that I was targeting. They just happened to be nominated at the time of the draft when there was no money on the table, because I knew that I wasn't going to be in the Najee Harris running. I knew I wasn't going to be in the Julio Jones running.
Yeah, sure.
I knew I wasn't going to be in a lot of the runnings.
So what was your plan for flex at that point? Like, how much were you willing to go up to, and like what kind of guys were you looking at?
$20 was the most I was going to spend on a player. Like that's the most I was going to spend on a player. And when Raheem came up, I was like, that's the guy on my list. That's the guy that I want. And it just happened that I was in bidding with Andy, and Andy said 19, and I said 20, and it stopped.
Okay.
It just happened to work out that way. That was the guy that I knew that I could get in my budget.
Hillers, what are your thoughts?
I'll start with the negative because it's going to be quite short. I don't understand how this is a man that hates a 2 quarterback, 2 tight end strategy, and of the 2 things, he decides to pick 2 tight ends. I don't get that. I don't get that at all. But
he spent $30.
Wait.
He spent $30 on tight ends. By the way, this guy.
Wait. Well, and honestly, if you think fucking Robert Woods is worth 36, Travis Kelce is fucking bargain basement value at 26. But honestly, this is another one of those teams where I'm like, where's the weakness here? You know, it's like, even with the low rent guys, I kind of wish I'd done more research this year, because the fact that Geo is at 1 is quite surprising to me. You know what I mean? It's like, I feel like there's a ton of depth and a good like ability to plug in very capable people week to week to week. There's tons in the wide receiver thing. You know, you got 4 guys over 200 points last year who have no reason to suspect that they would do tons worse, that you can play to matchups, you know, and with Kelce doing the basically number 1 receiver job at tight end, it's just a very strong team, and a lot of that has to do with keepers. But he didn't need to do a ton with this draft. But I think he spent his money smartly. He didn't invest an ass load into one player and make his team brittle, you know. And when he was when the dollars were low, he picked people that I think the consensus analysis had great opportunities this season. I hate to say it, but I give this team an A- on its draft. I think it was one of the best drafts.
I'm Hillers. I'm with you.
Except for the quarterback versus tight end situation. I don't agree, but we've litigated that already.
Yeah, strategy wise, disagreements, but implementation, I completely agree. This is it's a weird thing. I'm looking at this. I'm like, God damn, Nick, this is like this is one of those
You're
things you look
supposed
up and
to be
down.
shit at drafting, Nick.
You look up and down and you're like, my God, I love this is one, and it's similar to my team, Nick, where it's like when I look up and down this roster, who am I not comfortable plugging in my lineup? There's nobody. Like I'm comfortable plugging pretty much any of these players into my lineup. I think week 1, like look. Obviously, I'd prefer my guys, which is why I drafted them. But like, I get what you were going with, and I don't disagree with your strategy and the guys you grab because those are values too. Like those are guys also that you can just plug into your lineup. Like, so I'm giving you an A- as well. I think this was a great draft. Yeah,
Hate it.
I hate it, but I love it. And
Hate it.
Great job, Nick. Like, fantastic, man. I thought it was amazing, and I don't get the Higbee pick. Whatever, it's $4 Who gives a shit at this point? Like,
you're picking the Nets at $5.
Like if that's my worst complaint, it's like, yeah, you're never starting Tyler Higbee. You have Travis Kelce. What are we doing with a $4 backup tight end?
Yeah,
but I think you're maybe price enforcing at that point.
Brandon Cooks at $3.
Yeah,
I mean, what's that about?
I think you were price enforcing on Higbee, and you got caught in it, maybe. But yeah,
a little bit. I also thought Tyler Higbee was T. Higgins, so I had it. Wait.
Okay.
I need to
Oh
stop drinking and start drinking some water.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
You know, we're trying to give you a good grade, and then you say some dumb shit like that. It makes you think you Forrest Gumped your way into this whole
You know what, though? To be honest, I kind of like Tyler Higbee this year. I'm kind of.
I
okay
love
with that.
Tyler Higbee this year. And I was so pissed when he's going to be fucking rotting on your bench the entire year. It's going to be it's terrible.
I mean,
it's terrible.
yeah,
You took one of the best, like, 6 or 7 tight ends, like a top 6 tight end, and you just threw him on your bench for no reason whatsoever.
You know what, Nick? That's a great 2-for-1 trade piece right there, is old Tyler Higbee.
Yeah, good luck trading a backup tight end. I'm sure you'll get a lot for that one.
Backup for him, not for everybody.
Yeah, okay. I'll give you my 5th running back for your backup tight end. Let's go.
And we all know where your values
Yeah,
are. You're
sure.
not the only owner in the league.
All right, touchdown Jesus. Let's finish this up. Touchdown Jesus coming in needing typical, like the most, like there's not many things predictable in fantasy football. Pritchard,
a championship team keeping only
Pritchard,
2 though. 3.
Pritchard being no, he kept 5, but Pritchard
5.
Yeah, Pritchard. Pritchard's strategy is one of the most predictable strategies, and Pritchard's drafting bidding strategy is one of the most predictable things. There's like death taxes and Pritchard's drafting strategy is like it's the most amazing thing ever, and it fucking works because the guy just wins championships. So good on you, Pritchard. He needed coming in. He needed maybe he needed some wide receivers, maybe a flex. Not much, but he also didn't have much money. So his big buys were DJ Moore at 14. He bought Clyde Edwards-Helaire at 63 and Amari Cooper at 33 were his big purchases. After that, it was basically he waited around till dollar days and just picked whoever the hell he wanted for the last 6 picks. So
that's been his draft for years and years. Who do you want for the last 9 players?
Actually, we'll start with you, Nick. What do you think of Pritchard's draft?
I mean, the only players that he did not spend $1 on were CEH, who he spent
63
$2 on last year, so $1 in inflation, so got him cheaper than if you kept him. And Amari Cooper, who he also kept last year, or who was also on his team last year, right?
Yeah, he's got the same team.
Yeah. So good for him.
If you win the championship.
Let's run it back, boys. Let's go.
Much like the Chiefs, much like the Buccaneers, keeping the same team intact. Let's see if it can go. Good for him. There's honestly not much to say.
No,
he won last year.
Yeah,
Richard, I wish that we could spend another 5-10 minutes talking about your team, but there's really not much to talk about. You drafted the same team you did last year that you won a championship with, so good for you.
Is Zach Wilson the New York Jets quarterback? Are we positive on that? Okay.
100%. He will start week 1. And by the way, that guy looks amazing. He's got a fucking cannon, and he looks really good.
Against the third.
I don't give a shit who he's playing against. the guy looks great. Like, Zach Wilson might be a thing.
No, so I'm gonna give this a B minus. I'd give it, only because I kind of like some of the same guys he liked that he got for $1. You know what I mean? And I think that he could continue his absolutely unearned streak of success. Just basically with his keepers, but then he spent a little bit of money where there was some bidding to be done, and I don't love those guys, but I do think the guys like Rashad Penny, could be good. Or if, as you're saying, Mike, if Zach Wilson is good, if Chuba Hubbard turns out to be a thing.
If Zach Wilson's good, it doesn't fucking matter because he's starting Pat Mahomes.
Right. And so what I'm saying is, I think for he got at $1 many good lottery tickets, which I think was probably all he was looking for, right? So I'll give it a B minus because he needed nothing. He got basically nothing, but if the futures align, if the stars all go, we're gonna be looking at like an Evan-like dynasty of absolute intolerable shittiness here off of the back of nothing.
Nick, what's your thoughts?
Actually, it's your thoughts. I started it off, so
yeah, he already said.
Oh, my bad. All right, so guy's got 3 great running backs, 3 pretty good receivers. Typical Pritchard team, when stars and scrubs. If people get hurt, he's fucked. Like that's kind of bottom line, right? Like he's got Edwards-Helaire, Kareem Hunt, Dave Montgomery. Beyond that, he's got Dick All. His receivers, he's got DJ Moore, Tyreek Hill, and Amari Cooper. If
even if he's hurt though, Tyreek Hill is faster than you.
They're amazing. They're all great. Like, if none of them get hurt, he's going to win the championship again, and there's not shit we can do about it. So, congrats, Pritchard, on that. All we're hoping for is injuries, or like some weird thing where they're not good anymore, or something. Like, I don't know. So his draft, I give him like a B, because whatever, he picked up guys that he let go back. It's like he didn't do much, and
let me ask you. Edwards-Helaire, one of the most expensive backs of the draft, maybe the most expensive. What do you think? Worth it or
100%, 100% worth it. Yeah, 100% worth it.
All right.
Define worth it. Because he was the best available, or because he's worth the $63? And I don't really know if there's a difference in what I'm asking.
There's not a difference. No, it's the same thing.
Yeah,
I guess so. I mean, compared to like Adrian
it's
Peterson,
supply and demand, bro. Like,
yeah.
It's there was little supply, high demand, and that's the guy. He is the number 1 running back on the highest scoring offense in football, and Pritchard got him for $63. So, way to go, you guys, for letting that happen. Props to you.
Dalvin Cook for $57 scored 337 points last year. Helaire obviously hurt. For let me see how many of those weeks. Half? Half.
No, not hurt. Just didn't score the touchdowns.
Well,
and wasn't good for a lot of the season.
Nah, whatever.
Maybe overpaying a
Nick,
bit.
to your answer, worth it. All right, so let's get into predictions. We got to end the ship. This is getting long.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, let's start with you, Nick. We're going to go through divisional predictions. Who do you think will win each division?
So I have me in the easy division, Choops in the medium division, and CTR and Nightmare.
All right. Hillers, what do you got?
I have, and it pains me to say it, Nick in the easy division. Let's see, in the medium, I have you, Mike. I have the Hitman. And then in Nightmare, I've got CTR again.
All right, I'm with you, Nick. I've got Iron Pirate in whatever you're in. I got Choops and I got CTR. So I don't know the division names, but those are my 3 division winners.
Showing up surprisingly strong on the division thing.
I like the Choops. Who are your
I
wild
have
cards,
Watson
Nick?
and cards.
Watson and who?
Patty.
Watson and Patty. God, you're a big Patty fan, dude.
Wow. Coming up from the bottom.
Do you have like a Patty? You got a Patty scarf you can wear? Like,
You know what? I'm gonna
Hey,
have
he scores.
Patty.
He likes.
Patty, I've been watching a lot of Premier League. Patty, if you could send Nick a scarf to wear for podcasts, that'd be great.
Yeah, you
Nick's a fan, bro. He's with you.
Knit him one up. He's standing you.
All right, Hillers, what do you got? Wild card teams.
Wild card. I got Gazebo and the Masters of Elegance.
Wow. Okay. I have for wild cards. I've got TDJ and Hitman.
Okay.
All right. So
I have Watson
our
as well.
championship boys. What do we have for our champions?
Oh, I did have Watson as my champion.
Is Watson one of your division winners? Or wild card?
He's the wild card. He's gonna win it from the wild card.
Wow. Okay.
Wow. Okay, deep cut.
Wow.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Okay then.
Okay. Okay, buddy.
Okay. All
Okay.
right then. Okay. Wow.
Hillers, what do you got for
Fucking
champion?
CTR again because the world is fucked and there's no justice.
I have Nick. I've got you winning your first fantasy championship this year over Cyborg Tony Romo. Fuck you, Roscoe. Nick's gonna get you, and that's
What's all this means is gonna be fucking Pritchard again. And
it's gonna be Pritchard versus like I don't know, fucking
fucking
Dez or something,
Chiefs or
nobody
whatever.
knows. Yeah, yeah. So, regardless, yeah. So that's
All
anyway.
right.
That's our podcast. We're gonna stop it. It's been so fucking long.
Well, if you're still here, congrats.
Yeah.
You care too much.
Thanks for sticking around, boys. Well, we're gonna come back after. We're gonna try to get a few going, guys. We're gonna do podcasts
Shorter
this
ones.
year.
Shorter ones.
Yeah, shorter ones. We're gonna
Minis.
come up with bits. We're gonna do and shit. Like,
Minis.
yeah, minis. Yeah, this won't be a thing. But
Puppet shows.
thanks, Nick. Thanks, Hillers. Thanks, Merrill. That's me. And we'll see you boys later.
Thanks, guys.